Nana Kwesi Gyan-Appenteng is a consultant in communication, media, and culture. Nana was also the former chairman of the National Media Commission. He's been president of the African Communication Regulators Network. He was one-time president of the Ghana Association of Writers. He is the Apejahene of Achim Eti. Thank you so very much. In fact, presently, he's writing to guide election reporting by journalists.
Thank you very much for having me and for allowing me to sit in and listen to such interesting and elevating contributions by previous speakers. So basically, we started with the presentation by Sir Sam Jonah, and in a way, it appears to create a pessimistic scenario. However, I don't think that is how we should look at it. And I say this because my friend Professor Odrigajekpo started by, saying she is an optimist in that sense. And I think we all are. And we must agree with her analysis that this is the 9th election. And if we've gone through the 8 previous ones, with the media being that involved, then it cannot be all doom and gloom. However, the situation is that, as all the previous speakers have identified, the role the media must play during, before, during, and after elections, and all that, we know what we should do. So, what is the concern? The concern is that the challenges that we face, which are mounting by the day, are such that if we do not speak about them and do not find a way to overcome them, we would come to a time when we cannot take it for granted that the media will do what they need to do to get us across the line. And what happens next may be a catastrophe beyond our immediate ability to withhold. So it is clear that we expect the media to provide information in a transparent way, in an independent way, in a way that would empower our citizens to make informed choices. This is our primary role. With regard to elections, we would also expect and hope that the media would promote dialogue between the political actors and citizens, and therefore create understanding of the issues that are at play within the electoral system. Of course, monitoring and exposing electoral malpractices and all the rest of it, those are part of it. Fact-checking is a critical role of the media. But we've come to a point where, even though we know these, we must also look at the challenges. And this is why the point I'm going to make, and I have to make it a priority so that we know where I'm heading towards, is that there is a subset of political journalism known as election journalism. And this is a very specific, targeted way of conducting journalism that would enable our media to focus on what is important in elections. So, for example, in general political reporting, it's exciting to pit the sides against one another. But in election journalism, where we know the goal is to ensure that you have free, fair, transparent elections, and that beyond that, we have a safe society that is not endangered as a result of the elections. So that becomes a very specific way of looking at journalism vis-a-vis elections. And at the end of this, I would make some recommendations. So what has brought this election journalism into sharp relief is that even if you take the last elections between 2020 and now, we have seen the emergence of a very complicated media landscape. Some of it is characterized by some new phenomenon known as post-truth environment. And post-truth is the sum total of the fake news, the disinformation, all those things that have created an atmosphere in which truth is not as important as how people respond to whatever they are presented with. So, for example, you can simply drop in, I think earlier, we had a discussion in which there was a picture of somebody presented as that of the chair of the Electoral Commission. You just need something like that, or sometimes you just need a caption, which in truth is a miscaption, somebody to describe something in a way. And what is happening is that people then use that as an affirmation of what they believe in or what they don't believe in. And once they take that posture, it becomes very difficult to dislodge them from it. And so we have seen that the technology, as technology enables us to do various things, the challenges facing us are mounting every year. So if you take the first elections that I think, the 2000 election, I was not living in this country and I followed my joy, and that was our main source. It was virtually uncontested. So whatever was presented was basically what in the end held as the fact. Then come to the last election, when even as the tabulation was going on, somebody made a statement like, we are in a commanding lead. Comfortable lead. There was no evidence presented. The media took this and ran with that statement. But trained journalists in election reporting would put that in context and say that this statement has been made, but at that time, these were the facts. The elections officials had reported ABC. So you are not saying, and that answers a question that came earlier, whether we should not report what the political actors say, even if we know them to be contrary to the fact. Because what you want to do is not to suppress what anybody is saying, but if we've trained journalists enough to instinctively know when to caveat it or to put it within context, then what they're saying can be analyzed by citizens, and that's an important process. So when we talk about fact-checking, for example, it is not simply a question of going onto Google or some other search engine to find out whether the thing stated. Context is very important in this sense. And sometimes the historical reporting, what has taken place over a long period of time, if we can recall, which is why in elections reporting or in election journalism, the complex character of the election process is brought to bear. It is not just what is happening today, and it's not just what is happening on election day or even immediately after. It is the whole continuum of the history, the antecedents, and how they are engaging that we must take into consideration. Now, one of the main challenges we face, which has been highlighted already by others, is the ownership structure of the media in this country. It is something we cannot run away from. Probably the most dominant form of media at the moment is radio. And if, as we have heard, we have more than 700 active commercial radio stations in this country, which probably per capita, maybe we are the biggest consumers of radio in the world. And if, as we have heard, 1/3, and my feeling, is just a feeling, is that probably that 1/3 is an underestimate. But if 1/3 of that number is owned by politicians, active politicians, add to that another sizable portion of our media owned by entrepreneurs whose main interest is to use the media to promote their other business. So they are not in this because they love media freedom or in any way, shape or form are concerned about the integrity of the media, but solely to sell. So it becomes critical. The ownership question becomes very critical. And how do we then get this media landscape in which we know that people have vested interests? And they do not just have these vested interests as individuals, but they ensure that those they control must play the game according to how it will benefit them. And the answer is standards. We know that across the world, different media houses have their own ideological, political positions and interests and all that. But is the standard setting by regulators, by convention, by practice, and by acceptance of our commitment as journalists. This is where the standard setting, the normative process is so critical, so that we know the difference between news and opinion. So that when we are reporting, say, a rally, if at the moment what is happening is that if it's an NDC rally, the MPP press, and there's no other way to describe them, they are MPP press, would say that the numbers were small, and they'll say all the negative things, and we, the public, may not even get to know what was actually said at the rally, because that's not their interest. Their interest is to denigrate the event and take our minds off from whatever may have been said. And vice versa, that's what would happen if there's an MPP rally and the NDC press would ensure that the same negative treatment was given to it. But if we have a standard of news reporting that emphasizes the elements of news values, the truthfulness, the impartiality, and all that which we were taught with our mother's milk, then you distinguish between news and opinion, between opinion and commentary. So, and you make space for it. And at the moment, all these are jumbled so much that in some stations that I don't want to mention, you can hardly tell the difference between news and opinion. And the opinions of the news broadcasters themselves, even as they are giving it, they are giving their own interpretation and all the rest of it. So when we are able to set these standards and show that in news reporting, if the number is 100, it's 100 across for everybody. It's the same like reporting a football match. So once we've trained sports writers, they may support Hearts or Kotoko, but if the match is reported, the report is the same. The goal was scored in the 54th minute. You're not going to say it was scored in the 30th minute because that's what you wish had happened. And then after that, you can use other interviews and all that to establish other opinions. So I'm saying that we need to train, and this is where my proposal is coming in. that we must make sure that, I mean, we can do all the training, and Sheikh Shaibu spoke about the training, the Peace Council will be conducting. We know that there's going to be so many of these trainings, but what is the purpose? We must narrow the training to a point where, at least in all the major media houses, you have at least one person who is acting as the elections journalism person or even ombudsman within that press house, who can call out when something is going amiss. We have to ensure that as somebody pointed out, every year we have the NMC comes up with its code. You have GEBA, you have all these codes, but they are observed more by how do you put it? You know, they are simply not. They are there, but whether anybody takes any notice, we cannot be that sure. But if we know that over this period of time we've trained people who would become our eyes and ears within the media houses, and they take pride in saying that the same way as we've got financial reporters and they are very faithful about what they are doing, business, journalists and all that, we need to train some people not only as political reporters and all that, but as election reporting specialists. And I'm saying this because the objective of the training must be that in the end, the peace that we want to prevail, the fairness that we want to prevail during the election and the peace thereafter will become their objective. So it's not merely to fill the airtime or to fill their space or to make it exciting and make it interesting. All those are part of what the media would do. But they would have a very specific remit and a mandate to ensure that the fairness of the election begins with the campaigns. Are we giving equal time or at least reasonable time for each? Are we ensuring that we are drawing people to the issues? We are calling attention to the issues that matter. Right now, you see, what is happening is that we are all railroaded into one issue. So, for example, LGBTQ comes, and for a long time, all other things are neglected, and we all go in that line. During the election, this kind of thing happens often. So you have some, maybe an agenda, maybe not an agenda, but something can happen, and it is the responsibility of the journalists who would have gone through this training to say, hey, let's not lose sight of the following, which are also on the ground. So my point is that, one, the challenges, we cannot run away from the challenges. They include some of the issues and some of the scenarios that have emerged because of technology, because of ownership and all the things that many people have spoken about. But that we cannot just deal with them in a general way. We have to sort of target and narrow the training, and also to make sure that it is not simply people who get trained and forget about the importance of what they are being trained of, but to take it back to their media houses and become the authority, so to speak.
Great.
For
right. So that's a lot to reflect on, but I have one question. You also appear to look at the media concentration dynamics and feel the threat exists even in a formidable way there, where you have more than a third of the 747 radio licenses that have been issued, of the 175 television stations that are in operation, concentrated in the hands of politicians. That actually heightens the threat. But is the solution the broadcasting bill, which has been revised over and again because the politicians refuse to pass it. The broadcasting bill clearly proscribes giving authorization license to a politically exposed person. And even for media owners to be limited in how many media houses you can control in the country.
You know, I'm sure you remember our LI 222 for which went to the
Content Standard Regulation.
Standard Regulation. That we think was in fact even a better fit to meet this challenge. For one thing, we all this, the 1/3 that we talk about, I'm sure if you go to NCA, you won't find their names there. You know, they own them, and everybody. I mean, I did some work with Media Foundation in the Western region, as was, and there, I mean, it's known openly which station belongs to which MP, and on their morning show, who cannot be invited to which and all that. In fact, one station was owned by a dead MP. He was dead, but he still owned it. You know, and his tradition ensured that people who were invited to that station...
There's a lot of it in the towns and villages.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is clear. There's something that we haven't even touched on, which one day we should. Do you know the thing they call the loud speakers at lorry parks and all that?
Right.
In one election, when I did some work for Star Ghana, I discovered that political parties pay for them to broadcast. And that is beyond anything the Media Commission may even be aware of. And these loudspeakers are at markets and they just play tapes, you know, offered by the political parties, and there it's free for all. They can see this person killed this and this person's too, you know, and it just goes on and on and on. But limiting ourselves even to what we know in terms of the 1/3 and all that, yes, this poses a grave danger because we know they have acquired these stations not to promote their independence. They own them for a reason. But I'm saying that now we don't have the broadcasting bill, we don't have LI 2224, but what we have and what the NMC tries to do is we tried with the LI, which failed. But the thing is, once we are able to establish the standards so that we know, at least within the media houses, through whatever means that we can achieve, that the sanctity of news, I think that is the critical thing.
All right.
So people know that when I'm listening to the news, at least that much, we can all agree would correspond more or less to the facts.
All right.
As for opinion, we know their opinions.
Okay.
But where you cannot even be sure that a report of what somebody has said, and remember that one of the biggest problems we have today is the interface between social media and your traditional media.
Yeah.
That jump from social media to, you know, which happens through WhatsApp and Facebook and all the rest of it, and it quickly jumps and becomes an issue in the main media.
I come quickly on this also, at least, the issue about ownership structure of the media. And you talked about the fact that most of it is also to promote business. But you also raised the issue about giving equal time to people. And it raises the issue about profit making of the media as well. If most of this is owned by such persons and they're in it also to promote business and for profit making in the end, how are we able then to give that equal time? And then whilst you're at it, the issue about media being paid poorly and then media being abused and unrespected, and then also whether the media simply is a reflection of our society.
You have a loaded question.
Yes, it's loaded, but try and deal with it within 2 minutes for us so that we go. We will return because you are in the studio with us. George Sapong will join us. We'll have a lot more questions.
Okay, so here is the point. When something is paid for, and you explain that it is paid for, there's no problem with it. I'll tell you something. Maybe George can, when he comes. There was a time when one day a political party, frantically called the media. I think they called George, or they called Ambassador Cabral, one of them, and said one party had been given more time, etc. And when they went in, yes, but it was a paid. This was on GBC, where you had to give equal time and all that according to the agreement. But a business concern had bought the time for this political party. But when we received the message, I think it came from Mr. Hackman Uswajiman. So this was MPP complaining about NDC at the time. Mm-hmm. But when they went in, they realized that it was paid for. So it was more or less, it wasn't a free time. So there are ways, technical ways to ensure. In the same way as when you take a newspaper, we have a way to do adverts so that nobody will confuse an advert with a news report.
Okay. Right.
The same
we'll reserve the responses to the other questions after we are back from this break. Okay. And this has been your Joy Change Speaker Series 7, Ensuring Credible Elections, the Role of the Media. And I'm doing this with my very dear sister, Emefa Apau. We'll be right back.